The state of the global economy has been terrible in the last few years, there's no question about that. But in the US, the effects of the economic crisis have given many citizens many reasons to be fed up. What are these reasons and how terrible are the effects of the economic state on the average American? Stay with us in this video to find out. Starting off with the most obvious problem, the food crisis. Food is a basic necessity of literally every human, and the current costs of feeding in the US have become so terrible that it's unbearable for everyone. Statistically, the prices of basic groceries have gone up by 25% over the past 4 years. For comparison, the overall inflation rate of the economy over the same period of time is 19%, which means the inflation of grocery prices is even higher than the general inflation rate. This food crisis has made it near impossible for the majority of families in the US to cope, seeing as families classified as low-income earners now spend more than 30% of their income on just food. For the general American household, that number is at 13%, triple the transportation costs, meaning every financial class of American households is feeling the effect of the food price inflation. Now, these food crises lead to other frustrating effects on the average American, with the most direct effect being food insecurity. The state of the American economy has rapidly increased the percentage of citizens complaining of food insecurity. Now, this is not solely concerned with the increasing cost of food, but more with the generally high standard of living as a result of inflation and economic instability. Food insecurity is the economic and social condition of limited access to adequate food in relation to individuals and households. So just how bad has it gotten now? Well, in May 2022, the percentage of food insecurity among the US population was 25%. Fast forward to January 2024, the percentage has risen to 44% and is likely to be at 50% by the start of 2025. The economy has been hard to live with since the pandemic in 2020, but getting to a point where 1 out of every 2 persons in the US has the concern of food insecurity is as bad as it can possibly get. The next public issue causing Americans to be fed up is the increased healthcare costs. When healthy foods get too expensive to afford, an expected ripple effect is a health crisis. Take diabetes as an example. It's a chronic illness that is largely found in people who complain of food insecurity. And in the US, $1 of every $4 spent on healthcare is spent on treating or sustaining diabetic patients. As terrible as that might sound, here's the real problem. The current struggling state of America's economy has made accessing healthcare systems also become too expensive to afford. Despite the United States spending almost triple on healthcare than the average member nations of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, the economic crisis has made healthcare services more expensive to afford. Prescription pills have been getting more expensive by the day, and a majority of adults under the age of 65 have complained about being unable to afford healthcare insurance or being in medical or dental debt. Sure, President Biden might have made policies to bring down the price of prescription pills, but generally healthcare costs have skyrocketed in the last 12 months. Moving on, another reason Americans are getting fed up with the economy is the increasing unemployment rate. Unlike healthcare costs, which have been an ongoing issue for many years, the rate of unemployment actually seemed to be taking a turn until last year. The pandemic in 2020 understandably took the rate of unemployment in the US to about 8.06%, but that value steadily decreased, and by the end of 2023, the unemployment rate was down to 3.63%. Pretty impressive, right? Well, midway through 2024, the unemployment rate had gone back up to 4.3%. Why? Well, for one, it's because inflation and the economic crisis have severely limited the purchasing power of consumers, hence reducing the demands for goods and services and forcing production companies to downsize. There's also the fact that no one wants to keep working when his or her job can't get the bills paid. This has been the case for the majority of Americans in 2024, as the economic downturn has forced many to quit their jobs in hopes of getting better paying jobs or building a better life in self-employment. More times than not, neither plans work out, leaving Americans unemployed and frustrated. And then there's the unavoidable housing crisis. You've probably heard about the housing crisis, but only those who have been directly affected can truly relate to it. Here's a crazy statistic that'll help give you an idea. A survey of 575 counties in the United States showed that home prices in 569 of those counties are unaffordable for the average income earner. And if you need to be sure whether you fall into that category, the average income earner makes $71,000 a year. This is due mostly to the higher interest rates as a result of the Federal Reserve's flurry of rate hikes, leaving only those with an income of at least $115,000 eligible to purchase what is considered a typical US home. It gets worse though. In cities like San Francisco and San Jose, home buyers have to earn over $400,000 yearly. And despite mortgage rates dropping from the 8% mark it was for many years, the actual cost is the highest it's been in about 2 decades. Like all this isn't bad enough, Americans also have to deal with skyrocketing credit card debts. And frankly speaking, this issue is so profound, it could conclude a list of reasons why Americans are fed up with the economy. Credit card debts in the US reached an all-time high of $1.14 trillion in 2024. And only about 49% of Americans carry a credit card balance month to month. The Federal Reserve has also announced that in 2024, more than 6% of all credit card balances will be in serious delinquency. What all this means is that the average American is in an abundant amount of debt, more debt than ever before because of credit card spending. Because of the state of the economy, a lot of Americans depend on credit cards to cover all of their basic living expenses, like rent, food, and utilities. When this happens, running into debt is completely unavoidable. And going into the festive months, it will only get worse, seeing as the interest rates on monthly payments are also higher than ever. For Americans who have children, the poor state of the economy has also raised the concern of unaffordable education. While this might not be as bad as some other sectors we've mentioned in this video, it's bad enough to leave everyone terribly worried. Generally, around the world, the pandemic caused a decrease in the affordability of education due to the generally increased cost of living across the board. Basic purchases for school kids like school supplies, school clothes, and even food are now more expensive than they used to be, creating a big problem for American households. A recent study actually showed that due to the current education shortfalls in the US, today's generation of students stand to lose as much as $10 trillion in earnings over their working life. These shortfalls started with the closure of schools during the pandemic, but have now been allowed to worsen with the inflation across the board. Now, the issue of education costs is more of a global issue than most challenges facing Americans, so maybe we can give the government some breathing space here. But that doesn't change the fact that American households now have this as another worrying issue. Moving on, let's consider how the economy has affected Americans at their workplaces. For small businesses, by which about 62 million Americans are categorized to be employed, the economy has made accessing capital a challenge. Generally, small startups in the US mostly relied on the personal savings of the founding employees, credit cards, community banks, and credit unions. However, the ridiculous interest rates due to the current crisis make it difficult for these small businesses to take capital from these sources. Even lenders no longer trust a business without significant cash reserves and capital assets which can be used as collateral. We mean no one is trying to lose money, and since there's no longer enough in circulation, it's only right people are skeptical about loaning out to small businesses. These factors have led to a higher vulnerability for bankruptcy for small businesses in the last couple of years, and that doesn't look like it'll change anytime soon. But that doesn't mean large companies are safe from the economic crisis either. The pandemic in 2020 saw about 244 large companies in the US seeking bankruptcy protection. That was the highest number the country had seen since 2009, and the continued economic meltdown hasn't done much to help since. Many of these so-called large businesses have experienced a decline in revenue and profit in the last couple of years due to the purchasing power of the average American being drastically reduced. A number of companies have had to eliminate shareholder dividends to balance their books, but even that isn't helping. So more and more companies have begun taking more drastic measures like reduced hiring, imposing hiring freezes, suspending pay rises, and even mass layoffs. The economy has also forced companies to cut down funding for advertising, research and development sectors, and reduce capital spending and marketing. Have you noticed a number of popular American brands have slowed down their new product rollouts recently? Exactly. Just another way large businesses struggle to balance the books during this economic crisis. They may look like the villains in this, but trust us, these businesses are just doing whatever they can to stay above water. And how about the entertainment sector? This is one you very likely haven't noticed, but the numbers will prove it. Since 2022, the media industry as a whole has been performing significantly worse than other parts of the American market. Remember, we mentioned that large companies are forced to cut down on advertising. Well, large TV conglomerates in the US normally generate up to 30 to 40% of their revenues from advertising alone. With companies cutting down on advertising costs, entertainment platforms are forced to source funds through other means. They start by diversifying their library of content, which is why you can now see sports news popping up on your favorite movie platforms. When this doesn't work, they make more drastic moves like reducing shared passwords on online accounts, raising service and maintenance costs, and creating ad-based products aimed at customer attention. The decline in quality of entertainment is something hardly anyone notices has to do with the economy, but a bit of research will show you just how much they're interwoven. And approaching the end of our list, another reason why Americans are fed up with the economy is because they're now being forced to spend retirement funds. This doesn't need much explanation, just the numbers. Between 2022 and 2023, the percentage of Americans making hardship withdrawals from retirement accounts increased by more than 25%. By 2024, it had increased by 30%, and quite frankly, it's not going to get any better next year or the next. Just like the personal savings rate saw a huge dip from about 5.3 to 3.8% in the final quarter of 2023, the percentage of people taking out loans from their retirement savings is also skyrocketing. And as much as this sounds like it's a result of poor financial management, that couldn't be further from the truth. Since living costs have become unbearable, Americans are being forced to forego future comfort just to afford a decent life right now. Lastly, there's the effect of the economy on the quality of social services. If you're watching this video, it's likely you've not taken this into consideration at all, since you don't benefit much from social services, but those who do recognize how much the quality of social provisions has reduced. And this isn't necessarily about reduced funding from the government, but more due to the increasing demand for these services. Take food banks, for example. Over the last year, the population that needed to be catered for has increased by 20%. More people need the services, but the supply has stayed the same or even reduced. Private donations have reduced drastically, food prices have increased, and the longer this cycle continues, the more difficult it'll be for social services to provide the required amenities. That's all for this video on 12 reasons why Americans are fed up with the state of the economy. Which of these issues do you think is the most frustrating? Let us know in the comments section and enjoy our other videos.